Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Wings Podcast. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri. On today's show, we will meet Marisha Desai, a copywriter and a design professional who has worked in the digital marketing space. Art, music, films, and books are central to who she is. Marisha's true calling, however, is working with pure botanicals to make healing products, which she offers through her small business called Afterglow India. Welcome, Marisha, to this episode of Wings Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Milind.
Marisha, I was reading a set of quotes that I have in my personal collection the other day. I mean, I do this randomly, once in a while, and the list has grown over the years. And in the context of our conversation that we're having today, the one I kind of kept aside and I thought I'll read out to you now is this. I don't know who's written it, but the quote goes like this, that I always kept two books in my pocket, one to read, one to write in. I wonder if this is how the voracious reader and the prolific writer in you have lived and evolved together.
Definitely to a certain extent. So more than one book, I think I have many by my bedside when I'm traveling. I need to have at least 2 or 3 books to read, to change between. And then I do have a little tiny notepad that I carry where I write down quotes, I write down names I want to remember, even words that I've come across that I haven't seen before, and things I want to look up. And I always prefer writing it as compared to putting it down on my phone. So I have a little pencil and I carry this little notepad, and that's a big part of how I became a writer for sure. I loved reading, whether it's labels on a bottle of sauce, or whether it's a book, comic books, whatever it is. I always loved it. And when I took up my first job as a writer, I was so thrilled that I had to read things and then eventually write something out of it. But the exciting part was that I could read all day. Right. And then that's how it happened. And this was 10 years ago now, but I've come far, and I'm still doing the same thing.
Like it happens to many of us, and I'm included in that. I mean, reading happened very early in my life. I mean, as a kiddo, maybe with Amar Chitra Katha and those kind of things. But, the writer in me was never born. I mean, it kind of showed up once in a while. But I wonder if for you, if both of them have kind of played together as you grew up, maybe from your school days or college or ODS.
So I did. Yeah, so I always loved reading. I was encouraged as a child to read. My mom read to me every night, from Enid Blyton, like we just spoke about, to then later I read, the usual books like Goosebumps and different things like that. But I think my first grown-up book I read was Memoirs of a Geisha. That was the first grown-up novel I remember reading. But reading started early on. I would wait for my bus journey to school, because that was like a 20-minute quiet time I would get to read. So I would sit at the back and read.
And when is it that you first picked up the pen then?
My first job.
Oh, okay.
Oddly. I mean, I wrote I did my master's degree in Scotland. I did an anthropology-based degree on heritage and communities, my MSc. So that was a research degree, right? It wasn't taught. So we had to just write a lot of papers. But that was really academic. So I started writing with my first job. I jumped into it, like I said, and I had no idea what it was like. And my first boss really handheld me, taught me how to write, but I think I just had a flair for it. I don't know how. My mom was a writer. She was a copywriter. So maybe I just had it in me or something, but it was very easy. It just fit like a glove.
Remember any of your first assignments in your first job, which, somehow you remember now and it makes you feel proud?
Proud as in, I remember a lot of my old blogs. I still have them. I go through them sometimes and I need a reality check, to think about where I started and stuff. Oh God, it was horrible. I would write a whole feature article, like a paragraph.
Okay.
And then I think about how far I've come and how much I learned there, and it makes me really, really proud. And from not professionally learning that, I not only just learned how to write articles or blogs or whatever, which is relatively easy, but I learned copy, which I'm really proud of, because I mastered it in 1.5 years, and mastered it well enough to do it digitally for a lot of websites, for a lot of companies abroad. So the company I work for wrote only for companies in Australia, and so that's one thing I was very proud of.
And
Basically, getting copy.
when you do a
Hmm.
copy, sorry to interrupt there, but when you do a copy,
Hmm.
um, what are the goals that you set for yourself as a copywriter? I mean, how do you approach the process?
I think So I think most importantly, it's to find my voice. I've realized, a lot of the times when right now I do a lot of freelance work, I do a lot of consultancy, right? So when my client comes to me and I try to force myself into the mold that they are expecting in terms of what they want me to write, I feel it becomes boring. It doesn't sound like it's very important as a writer to have your own voice, and that eventually shows through. And whether it's conservative, whether it is tongue cheek, whatever it is. So it's to be authentic, I think. And what helps me write is movement. Like I get very stuck very easily. So it's very important for me to physically move, whether it's getting up and walking around the house for even 3 minutes, but physically moving immediately gets it flowing for me.
So then do people at home know when you're moving around that you're kind of busy thinking to write something then, and not to disturb you?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, because since this work from home thing has happened, a lot of people assume when you're walking around and when you're fidgeting, they think you're free. So then they start trying to talk to me, but my mind is very far away. But I think they're getting used to it.
You know, also amongst the other such set of quotes that I have it in my book about writing, and this is a little long one.
Hmm.
I want to read out this one to you, just to check which of or what of this resonates with you, or if there are any dissonances. I'd love to pick your brain
Hmm.
there. And this is how it goes. This person, again, I don't know who is this person who's wrote it, but this person, he or she said, all I knew was what I wasn't. And it took me some
Hmm.
years to discover what I was, which was
Hmm.
a writer. By which I mean not a good writer or a bad writer, but simply a writer.
Hmm.
A person whose most absorbed and passionate hours are spent arranging words on pieces of paper. Had my credentials
Hmm.
been in order, I would never have become a writer. I write
Hmm.
entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see, what it means, what I want, and what I fear.
Mm, interesting. I agree with it actually, because I think writing is a journey of discovery. It's a journey of inspiration. And, when you start off, that's not what you're planning to do. Like, I knew what I didn't want to be, but I never knew what I wanted to be in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm in the perfect place. And even while you're writing, there's so much confusion. It's just chaos, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. But by the end of it, what the result is, and even when after you send it across or you're publishing it or whatever, you're so unsure. But I think that is the process. And I think that's what's beautiful about it. You're never really done as a writer.
So are you then perpetually, as they say, creatively dissatisfied?
Perpetually, like all the time. I can't tell you. Like I even paint and draw,
Okay.
and it's been 4 months. I've just not been able to pick up my. So basically, I've spent the past 2 years doing a lot of this technique called stippling,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically you draw with dots with the ink pen.
Okay.
And I've done a lot of outlines, but I've just not been able to go ahead and fill it in. And I keep my book out, and I think, okay, if I keep looking at it, I'll feel guilty, and I'll complete it. But yeah, so I have a lot of blocks. I'm never satisfied with my end product. That internal war is ever, like, always happening.
So on 10, how much have you ever given to yourself? Max out of 10.
Um, As a writer, I think I would be a 7, honestly. I'm quite pleased with myself.
Uh-huh.
Like with individual pieces of work, even after I've sent it, I'm very worried. So I'm constantly stressed. Like some of my family members and close friends, they'd be like, you need to stop thinking about work so much. You need to stop stressing. But it's not work that's stressing me, right? It's my personal, what I look at probably as a failure or I could have done better,
Uh-huh.
that is getting to me. So I think even though 7 on 10, because basically feedback and because the way things have gone, I know it's okay. But personally, I don't think I'm sure till the very end, even after that.
But then if words happen to you, is what I kind of sense in that sense. I mean, having immersed yourself into the task at hand, which is writing. It could be writing for yourself,
Hmm.
writing your own
Hmm.
experiences or blogs, or writing as a copy for a client. Is the
Yeah.
challenge then arranging those words, or finding suitable words, or kind of making a necklace of those words together? I mean, where is the struggle?
The struggle is in editing. It is not in finding the words. That is easy. It's not in finding the angles or even stringing them together, but it's after that, looking at them again and again, not knowing where to cut what down, wanting to keep everything. That's where the struggle is for me.
But then would the writer in you have, did it breathe easy when the lockdown happened? Everybody was forced at home and we had no choice but to be with ourselves. uh, I don't
No,
know.
actually, it didn't.
Okay. So
Hmm.
so tell me, how was that experience for you? How was those first 100 days of lockdown, or the second phase, which was of course more scary than the first one? But
Right.
and I think that has taught all of us a lot of lessons. I wonder what impact it has had on you, and how have things got calibrated for you during those one
Yeah,
lockdown.
it's so it's taught us a lot. So actually, me personally, this is an interesting thing you said actually, because a lot of people, when I say I'm a writer, a lot of people who are a little older, they say, "Oh, you're a journalist." Then some of them ask me, "So what books have you published?" Then if I say content or copy, they don't know what I mean. So what kind of a writer am I? Sometimes I question myself,
Mm-hmm.
like who am I by the end of it, right? But so I call myself a digital writer. Everything I've always done is online. So when I started 10 years ago, it was just long form. We were writing these. I worked for Mintra.com, and I was a fashion writer. So we traveled, we did trend reports, we covered the fashion weeks, we did all of that, and these were long feature articles. And then things changed so quickly, it became like only copy and stuff. But and so there's a lot of brainstorming in that environment. Like you go into an office, you're sitting with the designers, with the stylists, with the creatives, and so writing is not what a lot of people imagine it to be. Like you're locked up in a room and you're very happy and quiet and writing for hours and days. This was a lot of interaction, a lot of people. So the lockdown adversely affected that, right? Because then suddenly I was isolated and I had to do the same job with so many stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, so the kind of writer that I am, I needed those people around me to do a good job.
So it's
So it
so is that
affected
is
me in
that
that way.
is that what adds to the chaotic process? One is of course the chaos in the writer's mind itself, and then the external
Yeah,
chaos that comes in through various other voices. And
definitely. To a certain extent, it does. But I think at the same time, there are times when, those 100 opinions kind of help you filter out what is real and what you need to be putting down, penning down. But COVID, on the other hand, since you spoke about COVID, let me jump to this. It was beneficial in a lot of other ways. Not
mhm,
maybe not as a digital writer,
mhm,
but in terms of life, right? So because there were a lot of, I started thinking a lot. You get a lot of time. I started becoming more conscious of what I'm doing, more mindful of my lifestyle. I slowed down a lot. Like now I come to think of it, my life was so fast. It was like snap, snap, snap. You wake up at 7 o'clock, you're out the door by 8. Then there's work, then yoga, then you're home, dinner, sleep, next day again. Now I had so much time. So I was actually going for walks. I was looking up at the sky because we were all in lockdown and you couldn't go anywhere. And I was doing things that I actually always loved and are so, they sound so dreamy, but you claim to never have time to do it. And life really slowed down. I would spend time doing very mundane things like eating. I would spend more time eating. I would spend more time having a bath and doing things like that. I was really indulging in myself, which I think a lot of people in my generation did, at least in the first year of COVID, which I think was, at least for me, it was transformational. I just don't know if that will continue because, lockdown was a big part of it. You had to slow down, but I think it was a great exercise to kind of rejuvenate as a person and to learn a lot about yourself.
So the Marisha, which kind of slowed down during the pandemic COVID days, if it were to look at the fast, busy, helter-skelter running Marisha pre-pandemic days, what would she say to her? If the two were to have a
I would say
conversation.
slow. Yeah, I would definitely tell her to slow down too, because my goals and aspirations were also different. But then I learned that with COVID, a lot of them were meaningless. Like, you're chasing these designations, these fancy jobs, and that typical fast paced corporate life. And then I realized all these things didn't mean anything. Now everyone is equal, everyone is suffering. No one is getting a hospital bed any sooner than the next person. No, like COVID does not care whether you're a CEO or whether you're a like new trainee. And so I realized what matters are little things. Spend time with your family, be happy, things that sound very cliche, but actually they're so important. And I'm hoping to continue doing those things and keep those things as a priority, not like a fast-paced career and materialistic goals. And so I would definitely tell myself to realign my priorities if I was speaking to myself.
But in many ways, touch wood, I think as a country and as people in India, we seem to be currently in a happy place in terms of the COVID is still around. It's not gone away, but we can live without our masks. We can move around freely. All of us are jabbed at least twice. So the body has some kind of a, resistance built in, and many of us have kind of slipped back to the old ways of living. So I wonder, what today as we speak, what of the fast-paced life of Marisha pre-pandemic days have come back, and what of the slow Marisha of the pandemic days have stayed together? So what is the potpourri mixture looking like today?
Right now, I think it's still a little confused, to be honest.
Okay.
So there are some things I prioritize, right? Like I changed a lot of jobs in the past 2 years since this COVID happened. Okay. And that's not like me at all. I'm the kind of person to stay in a job for 3 years, get another one only after that quit. I didn't do that. I was quitting jobs. I was jumping from one company to another. But I think because I was prioritizing what made me happy, I was like, if I'm not happy, if I'm not personally satisfied in this company, I'm not going to do it. And I would have never done that before. Never ever done that before. So I think that is one part of me that will stay forever, which I'm glad. I'm prioritizing my personal growth, my personal, maybe happiness, mental health, whatever you'd like to call it. So that is one thing. But the other part of it is, I like to work. I think I just like to work. So I thought I'll slow down in terms of the hours I spend doing it, but that is not happening. That is picked up again. It's went from 6 hours to 8 hours. Then now in the 8 hours, when I finish my regular work, I take on freelance work. I do other stuff. I just like working. I think that was a mistake. I slowed down because I just had to, not because. And I convinced myself that I liked it very conveniently. But now that I have the opportunity to do the other thing, I'm doing that. But I'm prioritizing. My priorities have changed more to me.
So then, are you then in that sense become a more short-term goal oriented in that sense? Because if something that doesn't give you joy and happiness, let's say in couple of months, do you then get into that honest, hard conversations with yourself? Marisha, what are you doing? Or do you give yourself that much time? I wonder about that.
So I look at it more like long-term goals, because my long-term goal, I keep thinking of it, in the long run, what am I doing? Do I need to be doing this thing every day? Does it put a roof over my head? Does it put food on the table? No, then if it's troubling you, let it go. So in the long term, I'm looking at being just being content and at peace more than anything. I think happiness is overrated. I think if you're peaceful, happiness will follow.
Mhm.
So my goal is that, and it's a long-term vision that I have, and I'm working towards that. So these short-term kind of stopgap steps that I need to take, quit this job tomorrow, and I do a lot of them overnight. A lot of people close to me are like, what's wrong with you, because they don't know this side of me, and I'm like, tomorrow I'm like, next week onwards I'm not going to work in this place. But because my long term goal, it's not fitting into that picture, and I think that is really the main transformation, COVID wise, for me at least.
Marisha, you said that working with pure botanicals is your true calling, is what you have found. Can you say more about that and tell us the story about Afterglow, how it happened?
Okay. So Afterglow is my own brand, and it's not skincare. It's more. It's basically ritual-based self-care products. So I make after bath body oils. I make body scrubs. I make salves, which are like healing balms for the skin. And everything is basically problem focused. They all are to target one specific problem, and everything's 100% natural, organic, certified. All my ingredients are, everything's 100% plant based. And so basically this is what I love. It has a lot of herbs, it has a lot of plant oils, it has a little of essential oils, but I try to not overdo it, because environmentally those are quite harsh ingredients to use, right? The impact is very, very heavy on the environment. And I use a lot of plant butters, and but it's a very happy experience for me, because I get to work with my hands, which I love. I've always loved craft, so that's the favorite part. I grow my own herbs. I love plants, so everything that I use in terms of dried herbs is grown in my garden. And so the story is funny. It started actually because personally I became more and more conscious. I started reading labels and seeing all these names I didn't understand, and I started googling alternatives, and then it looked very pretty simple. So I did a lot of courses, I did a lot of years of research, and I started making things for myself to use. And after using them, I decided that I can start. A lot of people started asking for them. I started giving away samples as gifts to friends. People started asking for them, and it became a business. So it just kind of happened. But this it's a small business. It's like a passion project. But this is where my heart truly lies. I get to innovate. I learn so much. Like every day, I learn something new, because this world is like massive. The plant world, the world of plant medicine is just humongous. And so there's so much. There's a lot of reading again that happens there. And when I'm done with my day's work and I'm staying up at night and I'm exhausted, I won't even realize that I've spent 4 or 5 hours reading. Like I'll be reading papers. I do a lot of online courses, so I'm reading that material and stuff. So, and I also do candles. So basically, the happiest part of what I do is that I can see things grow from a seed, right? So before it becomes a product and it's in your body scrub or it's in your spray or whatever, I am seeing it as a seed. I am growing it. I'm nurturing it, and not only there's a guarantee that it's pure, but I have been so invested in this process for months that I think that is what makes this brand something that I just can't let go of. And that's what I think makes it special. And like I said, not only using it is a ritual, but even making it for me is like a ritual. But all my things are, it's not like a beauty cream. You use it and in 2 weeks you'll suddenly be fair, right? You need to use things, you need to give them time, you need to smell it, you need to feel it on your skin. And I think that is a big part in terms of skincare that people don't realize. It's about self care, it's about rituals. You need to make everyday little things a ritual, you need to give it time. And that is the essence of this brand, Afterglow.
Marisha, you sent me and Asha a beautiful, beautiful gift, which is nothing but some of
Yeah,
your Afterglow oils.
yeah.
And when the courier arrived, the entire experience of unboxing your gift itself was so aesthetically pleasing. I can tell you that. I've told you this before, but I would like to say this again, is right from the way you had kind of packed those little oil in the small glass tube like bottles, and how you had placed them in very small jute bags, like 3 inches by 4 inches, and how the jute bag mouth was tied with a nice golden thread, and how those 2-3 jute bags with some oil put in a box which had a lot of shredded paper there, just to ensure that the glass doesn't break. And then you had written a very beautifully handwritten note you wrote to me and Asha on a handmade paper, and which also had a smell of itself. So I don't know. So it looks like this whole aroma therapy that you're talking about is not just the experience of the oil, but just goes beyond in terms of packaging the product and giving it. So I wonder, how do you hold this, this whole beauty, aesthetics, design, and how does all that play out in your Afterglow product making and packaging and distribution?
So, I somehow think this is also very natural to me. So, my mom is a designer, and so is my father. And I've grown up in that environment. And like my grandfather was he was an artist. My uncle is a photographer. So I've grown up in a very, very creative household. So picking things that are aesthetic and picking things that look beautiful and are also, fit together really well. I think it's just a second nature to me. I don't even realize how it happened. Now that you point out all these things, I'm trying to think back as to why I picked them, because I don't realize how it happened. It was just a very natural process. My only goal was, don't use any plastic, don't use locally sourced stuff. So everything I got is either from local vendors, helping other small businesses and things like that. And like the shredded paper, like it's an alternative for bubble wrap and stuff. And if I do use bubble wrap, I've repurposed it. I never buy fresh stuff like that, plastic. So I think it's just the aesthetic background. Like growing up, I remember, especially when about films and books, my mom has spoken to me even today. That's all we talk about so much, and half of it, as a kid, probably went over my head. But now, it was like a wealth of knowledge, in those terms. It was like it was like doing a degree in it, and music, because she sings as well. So there was just so much exposure, and that's kind of been my environment. So I just think there was no other way, I guess. It was just not hard. It was a very natural progression of who I am.
So, having found your true calling in Afterglow to make those herbal oils, which, as you say, has to be experienced as a ritual, which sounds so beautiful. What is your vision for Afterglow? How do you see this evolving and growing in the near future?
So I am, in terms of goals, I am giving myself a few years to juggle 2 or 3 things, because that's what I'm doing in terms of job. But I think eventually, when I settle down and when I narrow it down to one thing, Afterglow will definitely be that one thing, because it's where my heart lies. And I really think it's important to share. And I think it's not just about the products, but like you said, it's about the experience. And I think it's very important to build that awareness and make people kind of, adapt to that kind of lifestyle. So to a certain extent. So that is my goal. It's not just about selling a product. It's about selling it's about how it makes you feel, is what, at least that's what transformed things for me. And I feel everyone should at least give it a go.
And what's the vision for Marisha?
For Marisha, if I close my eyes and I think of it, I think of myself having a store, maybe by the beach or in a beautiful little town somewhere, very picturesque, selling handmade things, not just Afterglow, probably a lot of other things, whether it's a dream catcher, whether it is something that catches the light, like a prism based hanging or things like that. And a small, simple life, but something that involves a lot of making. I just love doing things with my hands, and nothing else satisfies me as much. So it's definitely something to do with that. And as much as I'm a digital person, I mean, it's been like bread and butter, and I'm so into it. I love it and I know it. But sometimes I just wait for the day when I don't have to open my laptop.
You know,
Like I really do.
you spoke about the word called, you gave yourself a phrase or an adjective called fidgety person a little while ago.
Yeah.
And there is this acronym these days, which is called Phygital, which is being in the being in the physical world and the digital world simultaneously. Maybe that's what possibly the metaverse dream is. But looks like for me, the person whom I'm talking to is a person who is a fidgetal person in that sense.
Yeah. Right now, I definitely am. I hope one day I can stop being the digital part of this world and just live in the physical world. And it's sad, but the way the metaverse and everything, as much as I loved it, I work a lot in that space as well, in the whole crypto space.
Yes.
But as exciting as it is, it's really killing people, like interaction, face to face. It's killing humanity to a large extent.
I mean, that could be a podcast conversation itself, Marisha. Some other day,
Yeah,
we'd love to have that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
as we are coming to an end of this conversation, I'm just going back to where we started about meeting the writer in you, and let's do a little what shall I say? A little simulation exercise in the mind for now. And
Sure.
let me ask you that if you were to embark on a project starting tomorrow, to write a book on this wonderful life that you have lived up until now. You are young, you just started your your own small business. You worked for about 8-10 years in the digital marketing space. So in many ways, as we would like to believe that you found your wings to go not only high up but far and wide. But in these years that you have lived this beautiful life, if you were to write a book on yourself, what are the must-have chapters in those books, in that book?
As I don't know, as nice as it does sound, I've done many things, etc. I somehow find it a little boring, my own life. I would like something exciting. I would like a mystery. I would like some investigation to happen. So I don't know. But if I were to write something about my life, I think I would write the importance of letting go. I think that's an important chapter of letting go of learned behavior, of letting go of conditioning, of things that I know or I've been taught that are good or that you need to do. Stages of life, processes. You finish school, you go to college, you do this, you do that. No one ever forced me. My house is a very free home. My parents always said, do whatever you want to do, all that. But there's peer pressure, right? Like everyone's doing this, you have to do that. Have a job, all that. I would, because that's really not the way. And I don't think, I think we're moving towards a world, maybe I'm too positive, but that's not necessary. You don't need to achieve these goals by this age, right? It's more important to achieve goals when you're ready. So I think that will definitely be a chapter. Letting go, doing things when you're ready. Freedom will be a big theme in the book of thought and action.
Absolutely. And I like the way you say it, that there is still a lot of mystery and adventure that you would want to experience and go through before you actually sit down and settle down to write that book. But as we end this conversation, all I can say is may you find that place and space in your life whenever where you will write that book, the book that wants to be written. I think it is waiting for you to pen it down someday. But this has been a very very different and a very wonderful conversation, Marisha. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast and having this conversation. And let me ask you at the end, as how did you feel these last 30, 35, 40 minutes have been for you?
Firstly, Milind, thank you so much for inviting me, for having me here. And it was so insightful. Like I ended up retrospecting so much on things that people never ask me or I never think about. It's just taken for granted by me and for other people. Assumptions are made. But you asked me so many questions that made me reflect on my choices, on my journey as a person. So thank you so much for that. It's a lot to think about, and I'm sure I'll be thinking about it for the future to come.
And I shall wait for the next gift that you will send me whenever that's possible,
Definitely.
because
Yes.
the oil that the aroma, I can't describe the aroma, but it was, the whole experience was so joyful. It kind of went beyond
I'm
words.
glad.
And may you,
I'm glad.
through your Afterglow venture, give such experiences
Yeah.
to people who enjoy your products, which are beyond words, and give them the peace that that you cherish so much. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, and wish you good luck. Stay safe and
Thank you so much.
take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you. See you soon. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75@gmail.com. Thank you.